to build the best football team in the SEC conference. We're going to build the best football program in the SEC conference.
You have now arrived at Stadium in Gale.
The kick, it's been blocked again! How about it? It's been blocked again! It's going to heat one deep down the field. It's going to be to the goal line. It's going to be gone! It's a touchdown! And the Gators have won the game! Tyree Cleveland! How about it? I can't believe what I just saw! Dropping back to throw. Thompson fires the ball over the middle. It's Dory! It's Dory! Got a touchdown! Dory's got a touchdown! Oh, man! Dory's got a touchdown!
Ahmad Black, in his final game as a Gator, takes it all the way home and sends Urban out the winner.
You have now arrived at Stadium in Gale.
Boys and girls, ladies and gents, welcome to another episode of Stadium Miguel. It's your favorite Uncle Silk.
It's Dan.
And Sleepy Delatorre.
Hey, man. Welcome back, Sleepyhead.
Well, that was my bad. We traveling back from Kentucky via Cincinnati. We got down, landed at midnight in Orlando, and then we just sat on the runway for 45 minutes. Zach and I had to make a couple stops on the way back to get some caffeine. Went to bed around 3:30, 4 o'clock, and slept through some calls, slept through 3 alarms. I'm a heavy sleeper as it is, but I think body just told me no.
You had to be exhausted, man. You had a perfect opportunity to get some negative Nick off, and you missed it. I was like, bro, he's got to be tired if he's not here for this.
I mean, listen, I was the only one to pick Kentucky to win the game.
Right.
Monday was an opportunity for me to walk in there, puff my chest, beat on my chest a little bit. Missed opportunity. I won't take that now. Other than just pointing out that I have been correct on my picks.
I don't think that's anything anybody wanted to hear. So, Nick, we're glad to have you back. Glad to hear that you're healthy, alive, alert, awake, and enthusiastic. Everybody is here in the comments. While you're here, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, all of that fun stuff. My favorite comment in here is, I'm just here for the Bud. We are here to bring Bud onto the show. You might be familiar with him from Twitter, Joshua Bud Davis, PhD. He did come in first place in the 2021 Sports Info Data Analytics Challenge. So that's pretty neat. So he's going to come on here. We're going to talk some nerd talk. Silk coined the term nerd talk. So we're going to bring Bud on here to talk a little nerd ball, a little money ball action for the Gators football program, learn a little bit about what we need to know about the Gators, both what we see with our eyeballs and what the math tells us as well. So, Bud, welcome.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, glad to join y'all.
Epic stash, Bud. Epic stash, my boy.
So Bud, talk to us a little bit about how you got into this, and then we'll dive into the deep analytics. We've just got a few minutes before our national alert on the live stream too, so hopefully everybody has their phone muted on this pod. So, but just letting you guys know, if you hear some buzzers,
I think it's going to go even if it is muted. So I might have to be quick on the draw.
It's quick.
I got it in my head.
Got it.
Yeah, so I got in
ready.
Yo.
Yeah. Pause. Yeah, whoa, my
Big
bad.
pause. So Bud, talk to us a little bit about kind of your background, how you got into analytics, and then let's dial into to some of the stuff that you've been writing about.
Yeah, so like I do a bunch of data stuff for work, just in front of the computer, programming, that type of stuff, pretty much all day. Went to UF, lifelong Gator fan, and then started coming up through like that message board culture. People get in heated arguments in that. And I said, well, let's figure it out. Let's figure out, is this guy right? Is this guy right? And so I started doing that and realized I kind of enjoy doing this. It makes me feel like I kind of get a little bit understanding about, what's going on out there, what's true versus what's a narrative. What can you prove versus what can you feel? And started doing that and have been just, doing that for 10 years now, and started with the Muschamp days. It's been a lot of arguments online. It's been fun at times, hard at others, but ultimately I enjoy it. Yeah.
I love it. Love it. So Bud, let's get in to some slideshows here for us, and let's start to look at some of what we have here. We'll make this so everybody can kind of see, and then whenever there's something at the bottom of the page, just let me know, and we'll change the view. So I guess here we're gonna do a little dictionary definition talk of what some of these stats are.
Yeah, and I think this gets kind of glossed over when like you see me post a chart and stuff. Is this stuff? And I don't want to lose people here because I don't think it's that hard. I think most people have an intuitive feel for this, and this is just how the advanced stats assign a number to it. So the first and pretty much the main concept that everything builds off of is this idea of expected points. And we watch football. We kind of have this feeling in our gut when we start on our own 25. We don't have that high expectations for if we're going to score a point. But, you get down in the red zone, you start feeling like you're going to score a lot more points. And this just assigns a number to that by looking at historical data. So there's a lot of different ways people can make an expected points model. But this is one that's freely available from collegefootballdata.com. So when you get the ball first and 10, own 25, you can expect around 1 point. You're going to get 1 point on that drive on average, historically. First and 10, own 25. You get it down to the 20 of the opposition, you're going to average about 3.5 points from there. But, you start getting longer distances or like deeper in the downs, 3rd and 10, now that's dropped down. You go from 4.5 to 3.5 points, even though you didn't change field position. So it's basically just a number of expected points, like actual score points associated with usually your down, distance, and field position. There's fancier models. This is a simple one that's just those 3 inputs. And it's something we all kind of feel in our gut, but then this is just a number that gets associated with it. And so
this
then
is Ocala Dave 473 on the message board. What would you say to me? Because my eye test says when we get down in the red zone, we ain't scoring any points, bud.
Huge issues, right? And I kind of want to get into this a little bit. Is actually getting down to the play calling and what does the data say is the glaring weakness in Florida's playbook? Like where is that puzzle piece that's missing? And we can kind of talk about that. And there's actually that's me. We got also this concept of expected points added, which is just the expected points and how that changes from play to play. So in the 2 plays from 1st and 10 on the opposing 20 to 3rd and 10 on the opposing 20, where you had 2 incompletions, your expected points added is -1. Those were negative plays. And so this just associates a value, a scoreboard value with that. EPA is an average scoreboard value. We associate one with each play, and then we average those. And that's a good measure of how good an offense is because it takes out some of the luck and randomness. This is expected points versus your actual points. So that's a good thing to do. Football's really high variance, though. It's a good predictor of wins and losses. It's not perfect. We like watching football because it is unpredictable. All right, so EPA is the big one. I think that's the main one we're going to lean on. The next one is success rate, and all that is what percent of your plays get you positive expected points added. So what percent of your plays increased the amount of expected points on that drive? And that's a measure of efficiency. You'll see this service academies, they have really high success rates. They're running that triple. They're making a lot of positive plays. They're not, making huge chunks and increasing those expected points, but they're going to whittle you down slowly but surely. And the last one we're not going to talk about that much, but that's explosiveness. And so that's when you make a positive play, did you add a lot of expected points or just a little? So it's a magnitude estimate, right? Did you throw a deep bomb and get a lot of expected points, or did you just convert a first down and get a little bit? So yeah, those are the main ones. EPA and success rate. I think if you've got those 2 down, you can do pretty much everything from there.
And about those service academies, you can be very successful and efficient there, but that brand of offense that they're running, while they run it and you don't see it a lot and they run it successfully, it doesn't create a margin for error. And if you're playing a team that's explosive and can score quickly, okay, well, now we need another 6-minute drive to match what the other team just did in 3 minutes and 10 seconds. And then you might have to convert on third downs. So I think the success rate can be masked some by an explosive offense. We see Kentucky, who doesn't have a great success rate, but has been very explosive. And then they come out against Florida and kind of look the way that they did.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think at the NFL level, when you look at the best offenses, they blend explosive play calling and efficient play calling. They find the happy medium, right? You don't want to be only explosive or only efficient. You have to have all the parts to achieve at the highest level, right? So it's not one or the other. You want both. You don't want neither.
Yeah.
Right? That's the worst.
I think I found both in Madden 21 with 4 verts.
Yeah.
Explosive
and highly successful.
And engage 8 on defense. All right, let's get next. So Florida's big picture. Bud, break it down for us here and what Florida looks like analytically.
Yeah, so we'll go into this. I think, we'll show it on charts, but I always like to kind of just tell people what you're going to tell them when you start off. So overall, we're an average P5 team. It's not where people want to be. That's what we are. We're a little bit below average on offense. We're about average on defense. For both offense and defense, we're a little bit better on the passing side, which is good. You want to be there. If you're going to be better at one, you want to be on that side. We're one of the worst P5 in the country at rushing. On defense, we're about average versus rushing, which is actually okay considering how bad Kentucky was.
Right.
Stats still say we're about average. We got some big tests versus some pretty decent passing offenses, UGA, FSU, Mizzou. And then, we got Vandy. We should have that pretty well in hand. And, you'll see me more in the offseason post a lot more about recruiting, but I do think it plays into a lot of what we see today. Y'all follow college football. Y'all know how important recruiting is. Portal, before 2003, we've been horrible at it. And then, you look at our high school recruiting before that, it's basically replacement level guys. 2024 is looking elite. We can talk about that. It's a huge jump in the probability for us to win a title. Big jump 2024 class. That's looking great. This is what we want to see. 2025, we have to nail. You can't go elite replacement level. That we've got to go elite. We got to stack them 1, 2. And we've really got to be better on O-line. You look at O-line official visitor lists and you look at who we missed on and who we hit on, and it just can't be like that. It's got to be better. You got to hit on those top O-line recruits out of high school. There is no position where recruiting ratings turn into on-field points better than offensive tackle. Has the highest hit rate in turning recruit ratings into in-game points in college football. There's no better position. And we missed all our top guys. And I do think we actually do pretty good high school evals. I think Napier's got a great history of that. Put 3 guards in the league. You don't do that from a G5 program if you don't have a good eye for what that needs to look like. But you can look at the official visitor list, and that's a great proxy for what our board is. And you can't have that high of a hit rate or that high of a miss rate. But we got NIL figured out. We got facilities figured out. Coming into the Napier tenure, those big question marks, even through 2023, those were big question marks. And we've checked those 2 boxes. So that is overall probably my biggest reason for optimism in potentially doing elite recruiting, getting it back on track.
I ask you a question, but what do the numbers say? Like, this is my thing with offensive line. I know we got to flip this thing in high school. I understand what you're saying with the success rate, but with the temperature of Billy's seat, heating up and looking at our schedule next year, I think the portal is going to be very important with flipping that offensive line room. I know we got some guys returning, but I don't know what fit-wise, how these guys fit into the system and what they really want to do because it's not running smooth. But what do you think about the portal coming this offseason and flipping the offensive line room? What does the numbers suggest?
It's hard. Offensive linemen, offensive tackles, no position enters the portal at a lower rate. Everybody's trying to get them, and none of them are there. It's the biggest mismatch between supply and demand. So it's not like it's easier to get them from the portal, but we can do it. I mean, we've seen Miami flipped their offensive line roster fast, right? They went in, they made that a priority, and they got it done. They've got portal guys, they got high school guys, they got a couple returning guys, and they've got one of the best O-lines in the country. Like, it can be done.
But I don't know if there's any actual analysis as to why. Is that just because if you are elite transferring to a new system where there's going to be time to gel with those around you, and being an offensive lineman is very different than being a wide receiver or running back or a defensive back, or maybe your presence is felt on a little bit more of an individual level, why they do enter the portal later or less often? Is it because it takes a lot of time to mature and grow into that role, that you usually are only a starter in most cases for a year, maybe two, I guess if you're lucky, 3? Is there any real reasoning behind that? Or
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. So I think it's a couple things. I think it's mainly development timelines, right? When we look at rates at different positions, the rates at which they enter the portal, it's basically the inverse of how early these guys get playing time. So, and it's also related to the number of them that can get on the field, right? There's one QB on the field. QBs enter the portal at the highest rate. You know, those guys aren't going to ride the bench. And they come out of high school relatively game ready. Same with wide receivers, DBs, they enter the portal at high rates. There's only a few of them on the field. You know, they come out of high school relatively able to contribute. They're not going to sit on the bench. The D linemen and O linemen, tight ends, they enter the portal at lower rates. They have longer developmental timelines, and they're able to get on the field at the program that recruited them a little bit quicker because there's just more positions, right? 5 O linemen, there's 1 QB. And I think it's all those things kind of mixed together.
And then from a offensive line's a kind of, you have to project, but a lot of those elite guys where there's less of a projection or less of a swing that they could take are going to programs. They're the 5 stars, and they're going to programs where, hey, you might have to sit a year, but you're going to be the starting left tackle your sophomore year, your junior year, and then you're going to be a first-round draft pick. That caliber of player isn't going into the portal. You're not going into a fully stocked Publix of offensive tackles when you go into the portal. You're going into, you know, at times a post-apocalyptic rundown Winn-Dixie, looking through, hey, what kind of shelf life is left on this canned good that's been picked through already? Yeah.
I mean, it's really tough. Florida lost a fair bit of O-line talent. We haven't seen many of those guys go on. You know, if you look at pure snaps, Florida won in the portal on offensive line, right? We got more guys who are playing for us from the portal than we lost who are playing for other people at the Power 5. But we lost Tarquin, he's at USC. He's starting right tackle. Man, that's a killer. It'd be nice if we had one more tackle option that we could try out there.
Any tackle option, it would be nice, yeah.
But also, like, you had Keontae Goodwin, who was projected to be a starter, and then an off-field family situation happens. You know, your heart goes out to them. But it's like, to your point, Florida, I thought, and I think I even wrote, Florida nailed it in the offensive line portal. Now, listen, I think I'm learning that Nick Saban doesn't lose offensive linemen that he would like to keep. But Florida did a good job of filling what I thought was a huge need because of the players you lost in Ethan White and Michael Tarquin and Osiris Torrance.
Yeah. So it's tough. I think it's a thing to watch, man. You got to figure out the O-line, and we can kind of talk about that because I think it's really one of the roots of all of our issues.
All right, Bud, let's keep driving through here. Is this where we want to be on the opponent adjusted? For those listening on the podcast, this is opponent adjusted EPA per play. Is this where we want to start, or do you want to start somewhere else?
No, this is perfect. So this is
that OU offense looking sexy up there.
Yeah, and they haven't played anybody, right? The opponent adjustment can only deal with who you play, and they beat the crap out of everybody they played. So they show up really good, even relative to everybody else who's played those bad teams. But this is about where I'm measuring Florida, which is slightly below average on offense, pretty much right on average. So average is those red dotted lines. Offense is on the x-axis, so on the bottom, and then north-south, y-axis, that's your defense. And then this is just your EPA per play. So you want to be upper right. Those are the best teams. You don't want to be bottom left. Those are the worst. Florida and Nebraska and Clemson are all in this kind of roughly average area where, I think those fan bases are pretty unhappy being. And Florida hasn't moved that much this season. This is kind of where they've been most of the year since I think I put this out week 2. They've been around this spot. And you never know, like they can move a lot as we get more data. But I think Kentucky was in a similar spot too, and they beat the crap out of us. And our defense wasn't quite as good as I was hoping. And this is EPA per play. And I think this is a big thing to understand for these advanced stats is their rate stats. So rather than looking at total defense, Florida doesn't play a lot of plays. Our opponents don't get a lot of drives. So when you look at total yards or total points, you're kind of missing how much of that is Florida versus how much of that is the opponent just not getting the ball. Versus this looks like on a per play basis, what do we look like? And it's a little bit worse on offense, a little bit better on defense. Luckily, the SEC East, our schedule doesn't look that crazy. FSU, Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia, they're all pretty similar. All right, this is offense. So Florida's in this bottom right quadrant, which is good passing, bad rushing. And we're down there, like you can count the teams from the bottom. So like Indiana, Iowa, Virginia, you get Florida pretty quick. Florida's one of the worst 5 rushing offenses in the country, in the P5.
There's probably one school in the entire Power 5 that you don't want to be associated with on the offensive side of the ball, and that's Iowa.
Yeah. And we're barely better than Iowa at rushing.
You speak for yourself. Iowa puts on punting exhibitions on a weekly basis. How dare
you used to live in Iowa City, Nick. There's nothing that I want more than the lovely folks of Iowa City to be able to cheer on their team. But we're in offensive hell. But
what does the number suggest? How much more effective? And I know we all as fans can clearly see that ETN runs the ball better. Does the number suggest that if we ran him better, that average and our rushing offense would be better if he had more touches?
I haven't looked at that actually. I think it would. It'd show our rushing offense would be better. I don't know if it's going to, launch you up into the good rushing quadrant, but it probably would be better. And you might get some diminishing returns if you're only running ETN, that type of wear and tear. What does that do? Mm-hmm. You look at this offense. We got 2 guys who might play on Sunday. We got ETN and we got Wilson, and that's not great. Because we're going up with some defenses who do have guys who are going to play at the next level. And it's really hard to scheme up an offense if you've got a bad O-line and you've only got 2 playmakers. That's really tough. But yeah.
I think we've seen that. Like just taking Wilson out of the offense because like those orbit, screens, those jet sweeps he's running, he's shown defenses have to respect that. I don't know that they've given the ball to Ricky on those because when you take Wilson out, Ricky assumes that role. I don't know that there's the same level of respect for kind of a similar player, a similar skill set at least. And it's kind of like, okay, well, that hurts. That's not just a player taking out. That's now taking away from the running game between the tackles. Mm-hmm. To the point I made earlier in the week, like or even in the offseason, I'm like Florida's running game will be hurt because they're running quarterback left. And you have to play 11 hats on 11 hats when you have a guy like Anthony Richardson. And I think, sure, you lose. Listen, Osiris Torrance was fantastic. He was an All-American. You lose Tarquin. You lose Ethan White. But it's just harder to run the ball when you're playing 11 on 10. If you don't have a quarterback that can run, it gives the defense an advantage in the running game. And then when you take out a guy as explosive or dynamic as Eugene Wilson, you've got to find other ways to make defenses respect something else.
My view is we got a really weird playbook. It's like we have a Frankenstein monster, and this is kind of what I want to get into and kind of work towards. Is we've got this. It's an offense that was built for Levi Lewis, and you can see it. Like it's the offense Billy got good at calling plays at Louisiana because he had a QB that looked a specific way and had certain skills and could make defenses do certain things, like respect certain things. And he doesn't have that. And I don't think he's quite adjusted that yet. We've got this, wide zone, rushing offense that I think ETN is good at because he's just picking a hole. He's going to that outside hole. I think Johnson's trying to work back in a little bit more, which isn't bad. That's part of the scheme, but the holes aren't there. So we got that. We got the deep Y crossers, which that goes with the wide zone. It's great, but it's all explosive. There's no efficiency there. So at Louisiana, what did he do? He went spread because he had a running QB. And so he had a passing offense out of the spread that complemented that. And those concepts don't work as good if you don't have a running QB, right? Mm-hmm. You know, people don't have to respect that at all. And so all of a sudden these spread passing concepts, they're not effective. And we're getting behind in the pistol wide zone stuff. And then so he goes to the part of the playbook that he's used to working on third down when he's got a rushing QB. And it doesn't work at all. It's terrible. You know, you can look at our playbook and you can look at the pistol stuff, the wide zone stuff, and the non-pistol stuff. And it's roughly a 50-50 split. And the non-pistol stuff doesn't work at all. So.
And I wonder then when you look at it, they're a zone rushing team who are recruiting 6'6", 370-pound offensive linemen. That's not typical of the kind of offensive lineman you recruit to run zone running schemes. So I wonder, is there a disconnect? Are you building for something different in the future and you're just piecing things together right now, which would kind of go along to, you know, the Frankenstein offense?
Yeah. And I'm not an expert in evaluating offensive line prospects. Like I said, Napier's put 3 guards in the league out of the G5 level in a quick amount of time. I'm going to trust that. I think he's got that down. I'm not going to say that I can evaluate O-line better than him.
Right.
Either.
It seems like even from the mold and the fit of the quarterback you're talking about, it just sounds like Lagway, right? And I know Mertz has another year to come back and try this thing again. But like, how do you see this getting fixed? Like, number wise, we already know what we talked about offensive line and recruiting. Transfer portal is just hit or miss with offensive linemen. Like, what's the turnaround here? Outside of, you know, we all want an offensive coordinator, but what do you think the turnaround could be schematically? You're muted, my guy.
Can we jump over to this big guy and make this a little bit bigger?
Yeah.
So this is our play calling profile. So this is all plays. And this is kind of, I think, goes in line with what we see. Our success rate, so that's this SR column. Green is good. SR is success rate, so that's that second from the right column, and then EPA per play. And there's a fair bit of green on here, especially in the success rate column. We've got some efficiency that's working pretty good, and we don't have any explosiveness. You know, we're hardly generating any expected points per play. So that's a weird combo. That's almost like a Service Academy profile, except we're throwing half the time, which is wild.
Another thing that blew my mind, like I was sold that it was going to be a run heavy offense, and you know, we were going to see a lot of running and then a lot of play action off of that. But it's just not that hasn't been the case with either AR or this or with Mertz. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, we run play action at a pretty high clip. You know, we're not half our plays, but you know, that relative usage column, which is like that center one, that shows how much we do it relative to everybody else. So where it says passing, then you got play action. We run it 44% of the time. Most teams run it 30%. So we're hitting it a fair bit, and it's a good play. We're getting 57% of those plays are successful. You know, we're generating almost 0.2 points every time we run it. That's good. And then, you know, you go down those deep target numbers, you're getting 68% success rate. You know, you're over half a point every time you throw the ball 15 yards, but we're not running it. We're not throwing the ball deep hardly at all. And it's pretty weird because the way this wide zone scheme works is, right, we're trying to get them to get the linebackers and safeties flowing one way, and then we want to have counter punches, big explosive passes. AR was great at throwing those balls. You do that boot, you hit that Y crosser, you hit that post, you hit that go. Like, those are the big concepts that we want to get. And when we're throwing them, they're going for great plays. We're just not doing it enough.
Yeah. I agree with that. Like, we have some 50-50 balls with Caleb Douglas that he's been just phenomenal with bringing those down. Even the past games, some of the ones we didn't connect, we're getting behind on defenses. I don't know why we don't do it more often. So I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
That's what we see.
But with Douglas going to be out for considerable time, who's that guy that can fill that role? Is it Andrew Jean? Is it
Andrew Jean?
It's got to be, right? Yeah, Gene Burke. I don't know. It can't all be through Pearsall. Yeah,
I'm surprised.
Marcus Burke's on the milk carton.
Yeah. I guess I'm surprised to see that screen passes only amount for 16%.
Yeah.
It feels like there's a lot more. I feel like they're all the time. And maybe because the RB target, if you add that in there, they're probably doing more swing type routes, at least from what we've seen. So maybe 30% feels a little bit more likely. But if you would have told me that screen passes were less than a wide target or a slot target, I would have called you a psycho.
Well, I think
where do those shovel passes? Where those find in? Like when Eugene Wilson, versus Tennessee, is running across and Graham Mercer's just shoveling that, because I know that gets counted as a pass. But where would that fit in on this sheet?
I haven't looked into that. I don't know where that would actually get plotted. That might go.
It'd be stuffed at the line of scrimmage, is what it would be, Nick.
It probably depend where he started lined up. If he came all the way from a wide, it's probably going to be those 4 first ones. If he came all the way from the wide, it's going to get tagged there. If he lined up as an H-back, it'll get a tight end target, probably like that. That's how I had to guess. The screens probably feel like a huge part of their offense because they're one of the things that work the best, right?
Yeah,
72% success rate. People tend to we tend to remember things that worked well or things that went terribly. And right now, screens are one of the few things that are working.
We've got a fact checker in here, Brian Mahoney, saying that Burke has been on the injured list. He's returning next week per Napier. Sorry, Brian. Nick is in those meetings, and I guess he missed that. So thank you for fact checking, Nick.
Yeah, I write the depth chart every week. I'll write this today. Check it out on Gators Online.
Nick sent the man to Nancy Grace and all. He milk carting him. He's injured. That's crazy to me, man. It's wild.
So the big thing here is we run the ball 45% of our time, and all of our run concepts are negative. Like the success rates are okay down here at the bottom. Those success rates are, they're light green, light purple. It's not bad. That's about average for rushing. The problem is they're all negative expected point plays. Whenever we hand the ball off, we're taking points off the scoreboard for us. And that's terrible. That cannot be running the ball can't be your offensive identity. Your offense can't be built on throwing a counter punch when teams start taking away the run game if your run game just doesn't work. And I think this is the root of a lot of our problems.
So we've also got go ahead. So
my bad. It seems like we will run more screens if we have a struggling offensive line. That slows down pass rushes and a lot of things, right? Like running back screens to the middle. Like a lot of screen game, I think we're missing as well from this offense, especially with a struggling line. Defensive lines know our offensive line is weak, so they extra, giddy and getting off their thing. But I just think we could run more running back screens, especially we got running backs that can catch the ball.
I think it's got to be. I think screens are one of the answers to get the ball to your 2 playmakers who, get the ball to 7, get him the screens, get him catching balls.
Speed and space.
Gators plus 30 of the relative usage for motion. It doesn't look like the Gators are having a ton of success with the amount of players that are in motion, at least seemingly how disparagingly different that number is compared to the rest of college football. I know that that's his offense. I know that there's a number of offenses, including my Miami Dolphins, that do a lot of motion. Why do you think that Florida is doing all that motion, not getting a lot of success out of that motion? Or what are your thoughts, if you've thought of any?
Yeah, Florida does a ton of motion. And, you can plot for the NFL motion use and expected points, and there's a little bit of a relationship there. Like more motion, there's been these meta studies, motion pays off. I think one of the problems is the way Florida motions does not add any sort of unpredictability to what we're trying to do. And defenses, and this let's talk about this, because I think this is the big one that for me kind of explains why Florida's play calling seems predictable when you watch it and is so ineffective. And so this is the Frankenstein monster that I was talking about. So on the left is our pistol offense, which is what we run that outside zone out of. It's what we run those Y crossers and that boot action where we run floods, and all of a sudden Mertz has like 3 guys he can throw to, where you got, Pearsall running the little leak. Like on the left is the pistol, and there's so much green, and this is about half our plays. And then on the right is our non-pistol, and there's so much purple. Purple's bad. And I know opposing defenses are charting this data too, and they're plotting it up just like us. And if you see a split that it's 68% runs when we're in pistol and it's 64% pass when we're not in pistol, not even knowing the game situation, you can know 2/3 of whether we're doing run or pass just from looking at where the running back aligns. And so when we're running this motion, it's not confusing anybody. All the defense has to do is look at where a running back is, and that's going to tell them almost everything they need to know about what our play call is.
Which is completely you're running all that motion to set things up or to give defenses different looks. But what you're saying is like, hey, the mask you're trying to put on is clear.
And I think it actually gets even worse than that. So on the pistol side, if you go down to verse middle of the field open, so that's 2 high safeties. And so that's man 2, cover 2, quarters, things like that. But if they're just showing 2 high safeties, it gets plotted in this box. You can see we have 1 pass attempt, 2 dropbacks versus cover 2, and it's 50% of our plays. That's insane. So why is that happening? What I think is happening is Mertz looks at the safeties when we're in the pistol, and if he sees 2 high, we're going to run the ball. And defensive coordinators probably know that's our cue as well. So they're putting their 2 high safeties back there. Now guess what? They know it's a run. It's not 2/3 of our plays. It's 100%. And the defenses can dictate what you're going to do. And that's brutal, right? If a DC knows I can put 2 high back there and they're going to run, it doesn't even matter, because then the 2 high can just run forward, and you can watch the Kentucky tape, and they're doing the 2 high, and these safeties are rocking forward when we're in the pistol. They know the runs are coming, and that's why you go to these running numbers. This is our wide zone running game. This is supposed to be our bread and butter, and it just doesn't work, right? 44% success rate, 0.01 EPA per play. That's really bad. Like, if that's your base offensive identity, you're not winning any games. So the good news is that the passing out of the pistol, we don't run it a lot, but it works great, right? Mertz is probably doing too many checkdowns, but this pistol passing game, that is working, right? The problem is the pistol routes, these are generally your more explosive ones. He's been good about getting to the checkdowns and salvaging those plays there, and our receivers on the broken plays, on the boots, those have been good, and pretty much keeping our offense alive. But, checkdowns cannot be your offensive identity. So I think we got to lean, get our passing game less predictable out of the pistol, especially, break that predictability, pass more out of the pistol, get that working. That's the part of our offense that I think we need to work. We have the personnel to make it work. It's working the best. You break that predictability, these numbers probably start going up.
Would you say, Bud, this is more schematic, more decision making, a little bit of both? I mean, I don't know how. I'm sure it's hard to track this data year over year with just the amount of change in personnel that you have, at the college level. But from what you've seen over the years, plotting this with Billy Napier's offense, is this pretty historically accurate, or is this just a this season thing? It was a last season thing as well.
No, it worked way better last year, right? There was less predictability, there was more effectiveness, and the big thing last year was the stuff that's on the right that we haven't talked about yet. That stuff worked a lot better.
Yeah.
So that's
And
our
is that because of
other
the
side.
mobility? I know you
Yeah.
mentioned Levi over at Louisiana. Obviously, Anthony Richardson, we thought had probably struggled a little bit more in those short to intermediate passes, but obviously was a huge threat for the deep ball and for the ability to run that you don't have at a Graham Mertz. So you've traded some things, right? I don't know if it's an even trade or not, but you've traded some things. So this seems to me like a scheme that may not work for the decision making of the quarterback that you chose out of 32 quarterbacks that you evaluated.
I think so, and I think they're probably learning this on the fly, right? This is the first time they've had a quarterback where the spread stuff, the non-pistols, passing stuff just doesn't work. And so you look on the right side, numbers are way worse across the board, pretty much every category. Your design runs, a little bit higher success rate because you're catching people off guard. They're expecting the pass. So basically, we run the pistol first down, we get an ineffective run. We run the pistol second down. Sometimes we get an explosive pass play. Now it's third and medium, third and long. Now we're going empty. So we're moving 7 out as a receiver, or we're putting him offset. Nobody's respecting the Mertz run. So any sort of read component to that, that inside zone read, that's not really there. But the runs do work a little bit better, higher success rate, but negative EPA per play. And I think that's just catching people off guard. And you look at the passing numbers and they're terrible. And this is where I think people know when you're going empty, this Florida offense is out of its identity. It's out of what it wants to do. It doesn't really have the right QB for it. It doesn't really have enough passing options. You've got Pearsall. You take Pearsall away as a passing threat when Florida goes empty, and things get a lot easier. And I think you see that, right? But you can tell pretty much purple numbers across the board. Rushing doesn't work. Passing doesn't work. And this is half our plays. We're going 11 personnel here, way more. We're running a tight end off the field. We're putting 7 out. And it's just not fooling anybody. Like I said, they know what the play call is 2/3 of the time. And the real brutal thing is those sacks and scrambles. That's actually, we got to talk about that. 11% of our plays when we're in not pistol are going for sacks. You're losing almost a point every time versus pistol. You're at 3%. So it's our pass protection is way better when we're in the pistol. We've got the predictability issues, but that's the part of offense. This old school looking, Gibbs style offense is working the best. And this spread stuff, we don't have the QB to execute, but we're still running it roughly half the time. And I think this is probably because we don't have the efficient passing game in the pistol stuff. And it's a big weakness of our offense.
All right. Word. What do we got on is that where we're at for offense? Where are we at on the defensive side of the ball here, bud?
Yeah, so that's the next thing is I got to make defensive versions of these. It's basically going to be the flip.
Okay, cool. This is all offense. Okay, cool.
This is all just offense. So I think this summarizes it. We're predictable, no efficient passing game from the pistol. We got a weak O-line, non-running QB, and only one receiving threat. So pretty much we'll go pistol base. They're going to show us too high. Then they can get downhill on that run game. Our run line, our O-line isn't great. So we've got this ineffective wide zone run scheme that we're trying to lean on. Get behind schedule, go to spread passing, no QB threat, limited receiving options, fail to convert, punt, rinse and repeat. That's pretty much our drive. That's our drive. That's why the offense isn't working, is because we're just stuck on this right side. We're in a loop. We got to break that. And I think the way we do that is,
No, go ahead. Do your thing.
I was going to say, I think the way we break this is we got to break tendencies. We got to do the things that, we got to throw more out of the pistol. We got to run more RPOs, more screens, and we got to throw more deep balls, right? Mertz has taken a lot of checkdowns there. Be comfortable throwing it up. This is not an offense that's going to win a lot of games if it's not getting those explosive passing plays.
I think, and this is just an opinion, I think Billy and Mertz is being instructed. I think Billy is fine to take what the defense is giving him, and at times that's fine. And I said it when we were talking with the Gator Nation football podcast guys last week, was at some point, your offense needs to dictate how defenses are playing you, not just accept, well, they're playing a cloud 3. We'll just take the check down. We'll take the 4-yard play. You do need to get ahead of the sticks, but if the run play on 1st and 10 is ineffective because of these reasons you're saying, well, now we're in a situation where we have to push the ball down the field, but they know we have to push the ball down the field, and now you're going to have tighter windows, and it's tougher to do that. So I wonder if Florida needs to just not, just accept what defenses are showing and giving them and take shots earlier. But then if you take a shot earlier, now you're in 2nd and 10 because you tried a 30-yard pass and it didn't work. And, well, we're not very effective running the ball, so we don't think we can even get to 3rd and 5 or 3rd and manageable.
I think Billy's learning how to call plays when stuff isn't working. I don't know if he's ever had the offense struggle with, he's got his play sheet, and I think it's probably, red lines on things he are used to being, green checks. All of a sudden, his play calls just aren't working like they used to, and he's learning on the job. And this is really where I think not having a dedicated OC hurts, right? You need a guy who can figure this out, and I don't think we've been fast enough to figure it out.
Yeah, I just see Billy wearing so many hats. You're the head coach. You're the CEO. You are not the lead recruiter on guys, but you have to be actively recruiting. You have more media responsibilities as the head coach. You're also the quarterback's coach. And you can say Ryan O'Hara, but how much do you want to say Ryan O'Hara, who's an analyst who can't technically be coaching when his feet are on the grass? So Billy Napier is your head coach, head recruiter, quarterback's coach, offensive coordinator, play caller. It's a lot of hats.
Yeah.
And so he can't – go ahead.
It's not unheard of, right? Sarkisian's at Texas. He's head coach. He's play caller. He's running a similar scheme with more RPOs, right?
It's a talent thing, man. It's not the hats. Play calling is a talent. It ain't just X's and O's. A feel for the game. Situational play calling. Right now, and it's been like that since he's got here. It's just no feel for the game, and no pace, no urgency. It's 2023. You got to have some type of tempo. We're missing all those elements, and I don't think it's just the hats. I just don't think he's a talented play caller. If he just was the play caller, like if Billy was our OC, we'd be mad. It's not just all the hats. It's just not there, man. That pistol's looking like pepper spray.
Pepper spray can be effective when shot.
It can. Yeah, Charleston White uses it, man. You're right, but it's not ideal what you want to take to an alley fight, man. It's pepper spray.
Maybe, Nick, you might know the answer to this. Obviously, Billy Napier is your offensive coordinator. Obviously, Ryan O'Hara and your team of probably 20 or so offensive analysts that you have, they're allowed to be on the field, but they're not allowed to coach. You have some up in the box. You have all this other stuff. At some point in time, they've got to be communicating, right? How much
the NCAA rule allows analysts to, when they're on the field, whether that's a game or practice, offer words of encouragement.
So,
they
but
cannot
I don't
coach.
even mean just that, but they can communicate with Billy Napier, correct? They can't coach Graham Mertz on doing this, but they can communicate. So you would imagine that this isn't just Billy Napier. Maybe I'm thinking pie in the sky here. This isn't just Billy Napier standing off to the corner calling his own plays, right? Like there's got to be involvement by all of these other guys that, as much as I love everything that Bud's doing, Florida has their own department that's doing all of this. There's got to be some communication within them when they're calling this, right? So, that's my question on, offensive coordinators. You then need Billy to not only step out of the offense, you're going to need him to completely separate himself and then probably the entire staff that he's built with what he has now, right?
Everything from Monday to Friday is or Sunday to Friday is a collaborative effort. Making the game plan. Billy's not watching. Billy's coaching the quarterbacks the entirety of practice. He's not watching the offensive line when they're off working with the offensive line coaches. He's not watching, when the tight ends move over to the offensive line, watching them block. He'll watch the cut-ups, but he's not watching it live. So it's a collaborative effort. The position coaches are making the depth chart, and ultimately everything falls on the head coach's plate, or on his desk, but you have a collaborative effort. What have we run well in practice this week? that we think can be effective against the defense and what we've seen on tape from them. But when it comes down to calling the plays, that's Billy. That's Billy on Saturday. And I think if you got an OC to be the play caller, you would still have that collaborative effort. But you're not asking Billy to take his input out of the offense. I don't think you're ever going to get that. He's an offensive coach. He's going to have his input from Sunday to Friday and might even interject on Saturday. But I think they need somebody else calling the plays.
But
Saturday.
Aren't these guys communicating all day on Saturday too?
You're not allowed.
Like they're not allowed to communicate with the players, not allowed to coach players. But like
I've seen O'Hara talking to the quarterback though on the sidelines, and that's when I asked the question, like,
well,
how's this legal?
If you're into snitching, then you'll continue talking about that.
Hey,
but
they
I
call
would
me
say,
Gunner, man.
I would say if Florida is running a ship above water here, that Ryan O'Hara is just encouraging Graham Mertz when you see him speaking to him on the field on Saturdays and or any other day at practice. Just words of encouragement is what is allowed by offensive any analyst.
I think what I'm asking is getting a little lost here in what I'm trying to ask. But
Ryan O'Hara, yes, can talk to Billy. Yes, all those analysts can talk. They cannot talk over the headset.
Cannot, or they
cannot. They can have a headset on. They can have a headset on, but they would
have to individually file in line to talk to Billy Napier.
Yes, so you could, I guess you could, like, Ryan O'Hara could walk up to Billy Napier and speak to him. The headset Ryan O'Hara has on should not have a microphone that he can then talk to all the other coaches. And they've talked about taking away the analyst role and allowing more coaches. But by the letter of the law, Ryan O'Hara's headset, he cannot communicate with, Jay Bateman, who's upstairs, or any of the other coaches. So the only coaches that can talk through those are the 11 coaches, Billy, and then the 10 assistants.
And then we still have no idea. Sorry, but I'm not trying to take this away from you. We still don't know what Rob Sale's actual responsibility as offense coordinator is, correct?
The title offensive coordinator allows you to pay him $1 million. You don't pay an offensive line coach $1 million.
That's how you get.
But as far as we know, there's not that dialogue on.
Yeah, like calling. Corey Raymond. We made a big deal about Corey Raymond being the defensive backs coach. That gave Corey Raymond a new contract and a raise. Corey Raymond's not coaching the safeties in practice. Austin Armstrong is.
Very good. Thank you.
But what does the number suggest with the remaining of our schedule? I know we have Vanderbilt this week, South Carolina after that. Like, how do we match up numbers wise with these opponents? Because it's like the race to try to get to 7 games at this point, right? In my mind.
I think that's the right number, right? Vegas came out with their line. I think you could kind of look at our schedules, not quite as hard as we thought it was going into the season. I think 7's the right expectation. We should beat Vandy down here. South Carolina's down here. Mizzou's probably going to be a close
South Carolina's
one.
up there.
South Carolina's on the road, which we travel ugly.
But if we think that Florida's offensive line is bad, please direct your attention to South Carolina's.
I feel better now. Word? They're terrible?
They're awful. They've given up 25 sacks. Spencer Rattler.
Beautiful.
I don't even know if he might. If I were Spencer Rattler and I'm asked by my offensive line, I would just give a no comment because Mama said if you got nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all.
Right.
So Vandy, South Carolina, we should be better on both sides of the ball. Mizzou, we should be better on defense. They probably have a better offense than us. Just pure numbers, season to date. Georgia, FSU, they're both better on both sides of the ball. So kind of coming down to how we're going to play Mizzou. It's nice getting FSU at home. I don't think FSU is as good as people thought. This margin from Florida here at average to this first tier, that's not a huge difference. There's a lot of variance in college football. You can win. You can sneak one of these wins in. I don't think it's out of the – we did with Tennessee. It's not out of the question for us to beat Georgia or FSU this year. Season's still wide open.
Yeah.
Putting that on TikTok.
No way that could get
we have Arkansas too. Josh
at home in all black. Let's go.
Bro, I can see it already. They're gonna make that like a noon game. Florida's
not in all black.
Field. It's gonna be 85 degrees. The fans are gonna be in black. The team's gonna be in black.
Where is Arkansas on this?
They're right here. So these lines, diagonal lines, are like roughly equivalent value. We're a little bit better offense than them. They're a little bit better defense.
Okay.
If you're trying to predict things week to week, though, offense, how good a team is at offense is more predictable than how good a team is at defense.
Okay.
Well,
What do you
Nick,
think? What do you think is the most? But what do you think is the most surprising, based on what idiots like me and the media wrote or said in the off season? What do you think is the most surprising through 5 games when you look at these analytics and you say that's not what I expected for this season from Florida?
I'm usually surprised happy ways because I set my expectations low. Graham Mertz is number 1. He's way better than I thought. His numbers at Wisconsin were awful.
Yeah, nicknamed him Murder Mertz, man.
I did not make that nickname.
We talked about him. He needs to get off the checkdowns and all that. But, overall, he's the thing that's working the best on this offense. So that's been great. And then the young guys playing so well on defense. We got so many young guys on defense. Usually, youth on defense is a recipe for an awful defense, usually. And being average, first year, new DC, this many young guys, that's great. And I think we're probably a little bit better than average. We played some good offenses. So those two are probably my biggest ones.
I think Montrell Johnson's my biggest surprise of this season. Not in a good way, maybe disappointment, just in terms of what we've seen out of him from a production perspective. We got some people in the comments here saying special teams is trash last year. Didn't expect much improvement there. Nick's favorite punter shakes the ball a little bit more than I like.
He had a very good game against Kentucky.
He had a great game against Kentucky, but you weren't here to talk about it.
50 something.
But I would say Graham Mertz is definitely a huge surprise. Nick, statistically, looking at what we saw here, et cetera, Silko, coming to you next. Biggest surprise, biggest disappointment.
I think the play of the offensive line, I thought Micah Mazuka was going to be really good. Florida talked about Richie Leonard really well. I thought Austin Barber would be fine going from right to left. And then I thought, hey, this kid from Alabama, maybe he'll be good. I thought the offensive line, I never liked the depth, but I thought the starting 5 would be good. And I don't know that the starting 5 is good.
Mm-hmm. So, biggest surprise, biggest disappointment?
Biggest surprise, I would say, just rushing offense, just being down, like being average where he said we had, or slightly below average. I know this offense is predicated. Well, my expectation was the running game to be something we depended on. Mertz is definitely a surprise, but my mind, Mertz is going to come in here, be a game manager, and us run this game through the running backs, and us not being able to get off in the run game. Starting from game 1, we did pretty well at Tennessee, and we won that game. The Tennessee game, in my mind, is what we're supposed to look like first half, and we just haven't been able to make that click. Biggest disappointment, I would say, pass rush altogether. I think the defensive line, I like those guys, but it's just a lack of get off, lack of explosiveness off the edge. So I would just say, just the pass rush. I think losing Justice Boom is showing up more than what we expected at this point.
And that's not a slight on Tyreek Sapp, but Tyreek Sapp's playing out of position again now. And I think he's been fine. Is it fair to say, if you look at just the 3 Power 5 games, I think the second quarter against Kentucky might have been okay, but has it just been 1 half out of 6 that Florida has looked good or been effective offensively against Power 5 teams?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, there's no other real bright spots.
No,
I think
the game lives on YouTube. We can just keep watching it.
Yeah, I think John Wilcox said the same thing. I like that take in the comments. We're also missing a little bit of Cam Carroll as well.
Yeah, I think you weren't going to. I mean, Cam Carroll wasn't going to get a ton of carries, but I think he would have added a wrinkle to the passing game. And when he went down, you're not like Tryon Webb doesn't get all of the plays that he would have gotten. Now you're putting more on Montrell and Trevor.
I just think from with Montreal struggling, right? He's just not getting off, and I don't know, what's his strong. So I was just hearing good things from Cam Carroll, and with Montreal not giving us the same production as last year, I think ETN is still pretty explosive and getting off a little bit here. But in these Montreal struggles, I wouldn't mind seeing another back that could possibly break some tackles in the backfield, which Montreal's not doing a good job of this year. That first step is not as quick, and he's not breaking tackles.
Looking at the PFF data, it's just like he's not breaking those tackles, but like both guys are also getting hit early after they're touching the ball, which is an offensive line thing. And if you're adding that, okay, Montrell is not breaking the tackles at ETN, it's like I don't think Montrell stinks. Like I feel like the fan base has thrown him aside, doesn't want to ever see him again. I think he's a bigger back. He can break tackles. I just think maybe he's even pressing too much because he hasn't had that big explosive run yet.
Yeah. Let's look at a couple comments here before we head out. We had a comment by a user named Silk. Hit the like button, got over 100 people in here and 28 likes.
Who's that guy? That guy's handsome.
Big fan of that guy. Bud Davis for Game Change Coordinator. We didn't talk about the Game Changer unit. Be curious to know the stats and how much of the game they've changed in the negative direction. But Bryce,
if you get the job, I can be your social media manager for punting propaganda.
Can you count to 11, Nick?
If I come to work with my sandals on and can use a big toe, then I've got 10 fingers and a big toe.
I love it. And then Q Lee, always appreciate you being here. At this point, we're cursed. We're a dumpster fire. At this point, UCF is even better than us, which is sad. Everything is a disappointment. Coaching, pass rush, special teams, and passing. Thank you for that, Q. He gave.
If anything, passing is going good relative to everything else.
Yeah. Let's see. Jared Johnson give more touches to Webb than Trell. He also said that Marshall and Kimber are killing him. JM should have had that pick 6. So, and then Brian responding back saying, UCF is not better than us. They just blew a major lead to a bad Baylor. That bad Baylor almost beat Utah too. So, Bud, let's get out of here with letting everybody know where they can find you, follow you, read all of your charts and data that you put up usually a couple days after the game is over.
Yeah, I'm mainly on Twitter at JBudDavis. So just my name, Bud Davis, with a J.
Yeah, that's easy. I love that. Well, we appreciate you guys hopping on and joining us. Before you leave, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Bud, we appreciate your time. We will do this again, maybe a little bit later in the season, maybe after the season, kind of look where the Gators finished up. But right now the benchmark is a lot of average. There's certainly things that Florida could do better, and hopefully I know Billy Napier is watching. I know Ryan O'Hara is usually a continuous watcher as well, and the rest of the offensive staff tunes in each and every week. So we appreciate that. Bud, really appreciate your time today. Nick, Silk, great seeing you. We'll see you at the same corner, same time, well, different time next week, our traditional time. Nick, set an alarm now, and we will see you guys next week.